Money can buy quality, but can it change a world? Hi, my name is Paula, and today we're going to talk about how to tell a story through photography. I've watched many films that were produced from the smallest budgets to the highest Hollywood budgets, and one thing has always stood out to me, that storytelling wasn't determined by the quality of the camera, it was determined by what the viewer felt. Unfortunately, that mindset has changed over time. Today it feels like people are more focused on getting as many Instagram likes or creating the next viral movie instead of telling meaningful stories. So how do you create an impactful photograph with almost nothing? Well, the goal isn't to ask yourself, how can I make this photo look interesting? Instead, ask yourself, what am I looking at right now? Or how can I use what's already in front of me to create a feeling, to capture a memory, or tell a fictional story? Photography is more than taking a picture. It's about communicating an idea or emotion through a single frame. So, before we jump in, let's take a moment to understand what photography actually is. The word photography comes from the Greek word photos, meaning light, and graphein, meaning to draw. Together, they literally mean drawing with light. The term was first used in the 1830s. In the early days of photography, many people dismissed it as just a mechanical process because it relied on technology. But photography has never been automatic. A camera is simply a tool. It is a photographer who brings creativity, intention, and emotion into the image. A photographer notices the essential qualities of a subject and interprets them through their own perspective, taste, and experiences. A powerful photograph can share information about people and the world. It preserves important moments and helps us see familiar things in entirely new ways. So, now that we have a better understanding of what photography is, let's begin our snappy journey by going over what we will do for our tutorial. Yeah, that was. So first, we will learn some terminology and photography concepts while I show the ergonomics of the camera. Next, we will understand what it means to tell a story with a photo. Then we will apply this knowledge and take a photo. After, we will transfer our photos onto our computer. Then I will show what post-production looks like and the tools for manipulating a digital photo. While we do that, I will show some Lightroom shortcuts on your keyboard, and we will export our photos. All you will need for this video is a DSLR camera. I will be using the Sony a7 Mark III. You can also use a Canon for this tutorial as both brands are similar in some ways. I'm not so sure about Fuji or Nikon since I'm not experienced enough with those brands. Aside from the camera, we will be using an SD card, an editing photo platform, and optionally, a hard drive. You're welcome to use your regular phone camera, although you'll probably not be able to use the next couple of minutes of information because of the big differences in concepts and ergonomics. So first, let's start off with shutter speed. On your Sony, you will find a front dial where you can lower and higher the shutter speed. But what is shutter speed? Shutter speed is the length of time your camera's shutter remains open, exposing the camera sensor to light. A slower shutter speed keeps the shutter open longer, allowing more light to reach the sensor. A faster shutter keeps it open for a shorter time, allowing in less light. For example, using a slower shutter speed creates motion blur, which can give your footage a dreamy, surreal, or cinematic look. This works well for dream sequences, emotional moments, or scenes where you want movement to feel soft and fluid. A faster shutter speed freezes motion, making movement appear sharper and more defined. This creates a more grounded, crisp, and intense look, making it ideal for action scenes, fight sequences, sports, and wildlife photography or filmmaking. Next, ISO, which stands for International Organization for Standardization. In the days of film, the organization created a unified numbering system to measure a film's sensitivity to light. Digital cameras use the exact same scale to measure sensor sensitivity today. ISO is a camera setting that brightens or darkens your image, along with aperture and shutter speed. It then forms the exposure triangle. This setting changes depending on where you are. My recommendation for night photos is to not go overboard with the ISO as this affects the grain or noise of your photo. The max I would go in the night without a flash is 3200, maybe even 2500, and for a sunny day, just low enough where you can see the shadows in the ground. Now we have aperture. Aperture is the adjustable opening inside a camera lens that controls how much light passes through the camera sensors. It works just like the pupil of your eye. It expands to let in more light in dark environments and shrinks to restrict light in bright conditions. Aperture is measured in f-stops. Beyond controlling the brightness of your image, aperture primarily determines your depth of field, which dictates how much of your scene is in focus. I mentioned a term earlier, the exposure triangle. This isn't standard and can be used on your own terms. This concept is merely a tool to remind yourself that if you shift a setting in your exposure, you will probably have to shift another exposure setting to balance your photo. For example, if you change your shutter speed, you will probably have to change your ISO or aperture just to achieve the look you want. Now that we've covered the technical side of photography, it's time to put those camera skills to work. Knowing how to use your camera is only half of photography. The other half, and arguably the most important half, is learning how to tell a story with a single image. One of the most common mistakes beginner photographers make is taking pictures of things instead of taking pictures about things. They photograph a person, a flower, or a building exactly as they see it, but they never ask why that subject matters. Great photography goes beyond documenting what's in front of the camera. It communicates an idea, an emotion, or a story. Before you even lift the camera, ask yourself one simple question. What do I want this photo to say? Every creative decision, from your composition and lighting to your lens choice, and the exact moment you press the shutter, should support that message. Then ask yourself another question. How do I want someone to feel when they see this image? Joy, nostalgia, curiosity, loneliness, hope? Defining the emotion first will help guide every decision you make behind the camera. Think of photography like a conversation. Before you speak, you decide what you want to communicate. Then you choose your words, your tone, and your delivery. Photography works the same way. Your camera is simply your language. Strong storytelling also depends on context. The best photographs don't just show a subject. They give the viewer clues about what's happening. Instead of photographing a fisherman standing on a dock, capture the worn hands gripping a fishing net, the morning fog rolling across the water, or the weathered boat waiting nearby. These details invite the viewer to piece together the story on their own. Timing is just as important. A fleeting expression, a glance between two people, or the split second before or after an action can tell a far richer story than a perfectly posed photograph. Often patience matters more than camera settings. Finally, remember that everything inside your frame either strengthens your story or distracts from it. Be intentional. Remove unnecessary elements so your subject and message remains clear. The goal isn't simply to create a technically perfect photograph, it's to create an image that makes someone stop, look a little longer, and feel something. When a photograph creates an emotional connection, it becomes more than just a picture. It becomes a story. If you think about it, nearly every memorable story we've experienced in films, books, or television is rooted in human emotion and desire. Love is one of the most common themes, but stories can also be about fear, hope, loss, ambition, belonging, curiosity, or resilience. Photography is no different. Now let's take our photo. Once we have taken our photo, we can grab our SD card from the camera, then insert it into an SD card reader port in either your computer or with an adapter. You can find your photos in your Finder or files on your PC. Now, these next couple of steps can be rearranged to whatever you prefer, but before going into post-production, I like to move the files into a folder in my hard drive with another folder inside, named as Original or OG for short. So when we open up Lightroom, you look for the folder and click. So when we open up Lightroom, you look for the folder and click it. Once we clicked on a photo, the editing section will appear on the right. So here is our right panel with our 6 tools to manipulate our photo, and of course there's more around here, but that could be in a different video since it does get more in depth. This photo was taken 6 years ago and it's already edited, and a shortcut that I wanted to show you for an edited photo which you want to reset all the adjustments done to it. For Mac users it's Command R to reset the edits, and for Windows it's Control R. Now I'm just gonna redo my adjustments and see how different it looks from how I used to edit when I first started doing photography. This is the final edit of what I changed to the photo. I feel like the first one was a little bit too saturated and a little too green, and this feels a little bit more truistic to the colors of the photo. Now this photo might not be so impactful, but it holds memory. Yeah, I made some changes to the light. I feel like this also deserves a video to how to change the color or how to manipulate a photo properly. Or at least, learn how to not overdo it, especially because a lot of beginner photographers tend to oversaturate, or their eye is still getting used to how things should be perceived as in the appropriate way. I also forgot to mention another shortcut to copy your edits or paste them. It's the same for copying text, which is just Control or Command C and for copy, and Control or Command V for pasting. And if your edit felt a little too harsh or you just want to undo a button, Control Z or Command Z. And that's it. This skill may be for a hobby or for work, but remember, your photo is proof of an event and can change worlds. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and this little info session in the art of a storyteller. Thank you for watching, and leave any questions or comments down below.